You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast series. My name's Andrew Mackay-Smith. Welcome to the show. Hope you're surviving out there. Whatever bloody COVID-enforced lockdown might be happening in your part of the world. I think Canada's going under. Certainly India is. I've got a few listeners in Canada and India, so hope you just bloody get through it and that these bloody governments get on top of shit. Either way, you know how it is. Moving on, the interview subject that I have coming up for you is Igor Amadeus Cavalera. He's the fella at the centre of a new group called Go Ahead and Die. The debut album, it'll be out, self-titled album I should say too. It'll be out on the 11th of June via Nuclear Blast, 11th of June 2021, if you listen to this in the distant future. Yes, you heard that name correctly. He is the son of Max Cavalera, therefore the nephew of Igor Cavalera. Yeah, and we talk about that because I imagine he probably gets absolutely punished with people. Well, I thought he would get punished by people who just wanted to talk about Max and Igor and all this other stuff. A bit like my conversation with Griff Dickinson from Shapes, who of course is, you don't know, I should say, he's the son of Bruce Dickinson. So that's some pretty cool banter to tune in here, but Igor's certainly done plenty enough based on the evidence on Go Ahead and Die to stand on his own 2 feet, so he should be regarded as such. So here he is, Igor Amadeus Cavalera. How's the calls and the interviews been going though for what you're doing here, mate? Because you've done a bloody good job here, by the way. But have you found that it's been, has it been rewarding and interesting doing the media stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I really like it, especially with people who have done their homework.
Yes.
I've only had one or two where I could tell they were winging it by the seat of their pants, but no, it's actually been a lot of fun. I've gotten to talk a lot about my ideas, my creative process, stuff like that. So it's cool. It's awesome that people want to talk to me. I'm stoked.
Yeah, that's a very good point because I've had a chat to Bruce Dickinson's son. He's in a band called Shapes. And of course, the obligatory, I had to ask, which are people focusing on the wrong thing, i.e., how many times does he get asked about Iron Maiden? So, look, I might as well ask you that. How many times do you get asked about your father and Sepultura and Soulfly and all that great music he's produced? Are people focusing on the wrong thing during interviews?
I wouldn't say necessarily they focus on his bands, but they'll ask me a lot about, I guess you could say, my relationship with him, my how we work together, things like that, which is cool, but obviously I'd like to talk about my own creative stuff and my own processes and things like that, but like I said, I've been doing about 5-6 hours of this a day for the last like 6 weeks. So
Yeah.
out of all of that, I've had one or two that I actually ended a little like, that was a little weird,
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, well, I meant what I said. I think what you've done here with Go Ahead and Die, it is standalone. I mean, it's a good thing that you can get someone like your father involved. But I know you've written this stuff, and it's just a killer slab of grinding thrash that fans of early Seps, Destruction, Napalm Death, and Discharge should love. Now,
Thank
I've
you.
mentioned those 4 bands there, but is that how you feel about the music you've created? Is that where the inspiration comes from as well?
Definitely, yeah. No, it has a really heavy old school influence. It's a mashup, which I really like. Anything I work on, I like to take a couple of different things and blend it together. So yeah, Go Ahead and Die definitely takes like a little bit of that Discharge, a little bit of that thrash, like Destruction, Sepultura, and a little bit of grindy, like Napalm Death, Terrorizer, and just mashes it all up into a crazy, sporadic, just frustrated, angry album.
Definitely, yeah, I could definitely a lot of what I call white knuckle tension, a bit like what Faith No More were doing. So
Yeah.
the album artwork, though, it does paint a picture of police brutality. So are you sending a bit of a message there with an image like that?
Yeah, of course. I don't think it's any secret that there's police brutality going on in America as well as many other places in the world. I think it is a global issue. I think it's a human issue. It goes beyond skin color and beyond things like that. It's going on around the world in my opinion. And like I said before, I don't think it's a secret or anything like that. I think it's something that should be talked about, referenced, brought to the surface, brought right up there for people to see, just how in the late 70s and 80s, lots of punk bands, lots of metal bands were talking about, political corruption and police military being militarized and shit like that, so it definitely ties in with all of that, tying into the old school scene and then into the current events, current crises that are going on. We live in a really crazy time right now.
Yeah, yeah, we do indeed. So part of me thinks that it's always been pretty crazy. It's just because of social media, we're more aware of the madness now.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I think there's more people, like I said, bringing it to the surface, bringing it right up front for people to talk about it, people to see it, know what's going on, be informed, and I'm thankful for that.
Mm. And the lyrical themes, they probably explore the same sort of issues, I imagine.
Yeah, no, we hit everything from the pandemic itself to police brutality to the ICE situation on the U.S. Mexican border,
Mhm.
all the way to things like homelessness and nuclear war and things like that. I mean, we really go all over the place, but yeah, it's definitely like the album's rooted in social stuff and equality, tolerance, issues like that.
Mm. How did you meet Zach? Did you know Zach beforehand? Because I've had a chat to a couple of the guys in Chemist before. Great band, by the way, and killer drummer. Was it one of those things where you were thinking, I've got this music, it's a solid project, and I need a decent drummer for this stuff, but I want more than just a decent drummer. I want one of the best guys out there. Is that how the relationship with Zach came about?
Yeah, definitely was something close to that. He actually got recommended to us by Arthur Risk, who mixed and mastered the record.
Yep.
Arthur had done the Black Curse record, which is Zach's other band. So yeah, it definitely was one of those things. We had the demos, we had the songs made with drum machine, and whatever, like really really sketchy outlines of them. And yeah, it was one of those things. It was like we needed someone. Arthur recommended him. We contacted him. He's an awesome dude, really cool guy, really friendly, approachable type dude, and as you mentioned, phenomenal drummer. The fact that he plays in Chemist and Black Curse, which are like two totally different bands, it showed us that he's going to be able to play everything that we want and more. So he did a great job, and we were really happy to have him on board.
Was it tempting to maybe to reach out to Zion and say, "Listen, I know who you are, mate. You can drum pretty bloody well. Why don't you do this?"
It got brought up once, but we kind of decided that with him already being in Soulfly, that could be him, Zion and Max's thing, and then this will be Igor and Max's thing, because we're more into the extreme stuff. I will say Zion's not so much into the extreme metal like grind and stuff like
Is that right?
He's
Okay.
Yeah, he's more into like groove and rhythm style drumming, which is pretty apparent in his style. But good drummer, just totally different style.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah. So what about Charles Elliott from Abysmal Dawn? He was the studio engineer. So look, I imagine at this point in time, like I've already alluded to, you can pretty much pick whoever you'd like to work with, and they know who you are. It's certainly know who your father is. So how did the relationship with Charles come about?
Well, they knew, like my dad knew him already through just working through Nuclear Blast.
Uh-huh.
Charles works there as well as plays
Ah,
with Abysmal Dawn. So they already knew each other, and in all reality, we were really just looking for an engineer. We actually wanted Arthur to do the record, mix and master it. That was the original plan, but I think he was booked with Chromax or someone like that. I can't remember.
mm,
But when he was booked, we were like, okay, let's just get somebody to engineer it. So Charles kind of came in and he just gave us the freedom to play what we wanted to, how we wanted to, and he would just be there to man the board because we're both cavemen. We know how to plug the guitar in. I know how to play it a little bit, but beyond that, I don't know how to run Pro Tools and do all that stuff. So he came in and he did a lot of that stuff, and we kind of just told him what we were going for and what we wanted it to sound like. And he did a good job. He captured it. He went along with our crazy ideas and antics and stuff like that.
mm.
But yeah, it was, once again, just one of those things. In the middle of the pandemic, it was hard to find people that wanted to do something or were safe to do something
Yeah.
or were willing to. A lot of people were on lockdown or couldn't fly or were busy doing something else. So it was another one of those things of it worked out in the moment. So we went with it.
Yeah, it's actually got a great sound, dude. Like the guitars sound like they're punching you in the face, which with your music, I think it needs to sound like that.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thank you. We took a lot of time to make sure every last thing was how we wanted it to be.
So you do come from an impeccable pedigree, and that's your mum included. She's obviously a very strong woman and helped your dad a lot. But in terms of inspiration for becoming a musician, it's too obvious to say you grew up in that environment. There's got to be a little bit more than that. So, can you tell me about what inspired you to become a musician? Because I know it's not easy. I mean, you are standing on your own 2 feet here. So, was it something where it was just within you and you went, fuck it, I'm going to be a musician, I'm going to give this thing a go?
Yeah, it was exactly like that. I was always interested in it. I started playing at a young age. I think when I was 15, I started making my first bands and just jamming with like some kids in the neighborhood type stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you know, I never knew if I was going to be able to do it professionally or if I was good enough or any of the doubts or
Mm,
anxieties you can have as a young musician because you're young and you see all these successful bands and you feel like the world is against you and all this stuff. But I once I had a solid band and we played a couple of shows, I knew that it was definitely something I wanted to pursue and something that I wanted to do. So I did go all in on it, and I just started playing as much as I could and listening as much as I could, and trying to educate myself on the business side of it as well. You know, I admire both my parents in that sense of my dad does the music, my mom does the business, and
yeah.
I like to think that I'm learning both, and I'll be the weird conglomerate of both of them one day, you know. But uh, it was something that it was a struggle, and it's hard, and no matter who my father is or what people can say or try to use against me, you know, silver spoon type stuff, you
Oh
know,
yeah.
we went out there and worked and drove ourselves and set ourselves up and sold our own stuff and paid for our own stuff and you know we do all of this ourselves and even with Go Ahead and Die, um like you said, it's getting labeled as Max's thing, but you know I actually had uh you know the majority of the writing to do with it, you know. So you know, it wasn't as natural as people would like to think or as easy as people like to think. I was in a lot of different bands, different styles, had to find the right members, you know, went through ins and outs, losing friendships, things like that, you know,
Yeah.
everything you go through to eventually become successful. And it took a long time. Like I said, I started when I was 15. I'm about 26 now.
Mm.
So I've been doing this for over 10 years now, and I feel like I'm just starting to have professional bands that are making some waves and doing stuff. But it was a long climb, and I've been working hard and getting better as a musician and practicing, educating, you know, and refining my craft. And it's been a long way, but I'm happy to be here.
I imagine somebody in your position, you've had to deal with some pretty strange people, some frauds and hucksters who just want to be associated with the name, so to speak. You've probably had to grow up quickly. I would imagine someone like yourself has had to grow up fairly fast, particularly being in a band, because I'm a musician as well. And a lot of musicians are fucking idiots. We both know that. They're just so hard to be around. I mean, musicians are hard to be in a band with in general, yet alone be around. But has that been the case? And do you feel as though you had to grow up quickly?
Certainly. You know, when you take into account that I was about 16, already hitting the road and doing stuff,
Mm,
that's not what a lot of 16-year-olds are doing. You know, you're out there on the interstates, you know, as a teenager, like you're going up to grown men promoters to get paid and get your money and
yes.
do stuff like that. And yeah, I have dealt with people who wanted to try and get close because of the name, try to gain clout, try to do stuff like that, and
Yeah.
they realize we're a no bullshit professional family that takes this shit very seriously, and Yeah, there might have been a couple of years where maybe I was like a little more frivolous, partying, being crazy, doing stuff like that. But yeah, by the time I was 16, I was handling my own stuff and making my own merch and contacting like record labels and trying to get signed
Mm,
and doing all this stuff myself. But it is tough. It's hard to find people that are good to jam with and to find people that are going to help you grow as a musician and
mhm.
stuff like that. It's really easy to get stuck with people who are just there for the good times or just there to party, just there to gain something.
Yeah.
And now I feel like I'm finally in some bands where I'm with people who love music, appreciate music, and live and breathe and will die for it, just like I will.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. When you were writing the material in Go Ahead and Die, is this a culmination of the 10 years that you're talking about? The old saying about you spend your entire life writing your debut album. But if you got new material, I imagine you got plenty of new material in the vault, so to speak, for the next album. So is that the case as well?
Yeah, no, it's definitely something that we're gonna have to see how well this record does and stuff if we're
Sure.
gonna go into doing more and writing more. But no, I can't agree with that. If you listen to my old stuff, um, it's not gonna sound exactly like it. It's gonna sound much different, but you'll see the elements there sometimes, and you'll see bits and pieces um, that will remind you of stuff I'm doing now, and it's because I am still the same musician, and I still like a lot of the same stuff, and I'm trying to create stuff in that vein still, but I just better at it or more knowledgeable or gotten better at playing, however you want to put it, but
Mm.
it's definitely apparent. You could see those punk influences in my first band Lodi Cog, and you could see
Mm.
even some of it in bands I'm currently doing. I'm constantly writing and coming up with stuff, and who knows what band it's going to wind up going to.
Yeah, you mentioned that a couple of times now. I didn't realize that you were in so many other bands. So obviously you've got Go Ahead and Die. But can you tell me about some of the other bands that you're in that have releases out there that people can tune into?
Yeah, I mentioned before I was in a band called Lodi Kong. We were active for about 6 or 7 years, but we actually in 2018 we went on hiatus because that was with my brother Zion, who plays drums with Soulfly. So
Sure.
it's one of those things. He was a little too busy with them, so I started doing my own thing. But now I have a stoner sludge band called Healing Magic, and that is kind of like my baby band, you could say. That's that's what you could say is my main band. And it's in a totally different vein from Go Ahead and Die. It's much slower, groovier, ambient, taking influences from bands like Neurosis and
Nice.
stuff like that. It's a totally different category and style of music. But yeah, we actually have one EP that's currently available to stream and to look up online, and we have a full length album coming out later this year. So once Go Ahead and Die stuff starts to wrap up, I'm actually going to start moving right into releasing that album, promoting that album, doing interviews on it, stuff like that.
Nice. Okay.
So those are the two bands I'm in now, or Go Ahead and Die and Healing Magic. So yeah, just check us out. Let us know what you think.
Is that going to be with Nuclear Blast as well?
We're actually with Healing Magic. We're currently on Blood Blast, which is a digital distribution of Nuclear.
Sure. Yeah.
So technically, I think they're keeping an eye on us, and if we're lucky, maybe we'll get the bump up to Nuclear.
Nice, yeah. I've spoken to your dad I think I've spoken to your father half a dozen times now, and unbelievably, I remember meeting him in the Roosevelt in year 2000 in Los Angeles,
Oh
and
wow,
you would have been a mere kid back then. And I remember seeing
yeah.
your entire family, and your father was just so he was so gracious, I've got to say. And I've spoken to him about this. It's one thing to do the interviews, it's another thing to meet fans in the moment, so to speak. And I remember I had to go and get a pen, and this woman at this like registration, the reception, sorry, she was a
Yeah.
bitch. She was a bitch. She didn't want to give me the pen and stuff. And your father had to wait there for about 5 minutes or so, talking to my brother, who would not be able to tell you a metal band outside of potentially Metallica. Just is not. He's a lawyer.
Yeah.
He's a total non-metal person. But your father was so gracious and spoke to my brother for 5 minutes and waited for me to get a pen. Now I imagine you've seen that moment that I've just described there happen again and again and again. Growing up with someone like your father, though, who once described to me that working with Zion was like training Khabib in the UFC because like with the drumming side of things, he was saying that Khabib grew up um, with a father that was making him wrestle bears, that sort of thing. With your father, apart from being such a lovely human being and meeting fans and this sort of stuff, was he a disciplinarian around the music though? Because I mean, both your Zion and yourself, you've got it in your DNA, but you've also got the discipline here to create killer stuff like what you're doing here with Go Ahead and Die. So was that the experience? Was he a bit of a disciplinarian around the music as well?
Not at all, actually. And I suppose that's just the chemistry of families.
Mm,
No, our writing process was actually very, very free and fluid, and I felt like we were teaching each other. That was also the intention with it. His relationship with Zion might be different because that's Soulfly.
mm,
Soulfly is my father's band. As much as Zion brings an influence, or Mark Rizzo changes songs with his solos and stuff like that, you know, that's Max's band. And so he keeps his band members doing what he would like of them. Whereas Go Ahead and Die was our band. It was a
mm.
collective thing. It was like that. So no, he wasn't like that with me. And that might be, like I said, just family chemistry. My brother might be like, oh, Igor always gets to have the fun and and I gotta learn the Soulfly songs, like, that it might be just one of those chemistry things. Because yeah, he was actually very, very fluid with me, and was very open to my ideas, and letting me have some creative freedom and creative control and stuff like that.
Mm.
So, I imagine he approaches each record differently though. So who knows if that answer would be the same a couple years from now.
Yeah, yeah. What sort of music are you listening to? What music do you draw inspiration from these days?
I listen to tons of stuff, but lately I've honestly not so much been in the metal scene so much. I've actually been listening to like a lot of goth and dark wave and stuff like that.
Mm.
But one thing I will say is that anything I listen to makes its way into my music. If I'm listening to gothic stuff, like it'll find a way into one of my riffs. I like a lot of rock and roll, retro style stuff. That finds its way into my music. And then other than that, I'm just kind of always looking for new metal bands, looking for new punk bands and stuff like that. My dad actually sends me suggestions because he's just like a band camp freak. He's like sitting there all day looking for underground bands and stuff like that. So he sends me lots of suggestions, and we kind of send stuff back and forth. But yeah, I don't. It's kind of hard to answer. I honestly, I listen to a little bit of everything, and I keep a really, really wide array of stuff in my repertoire. So everything from dark wave to sludge metal to, honestly, I've been listening to a little bit of new metal lately. I won't even beat around the
Wow.
bush. I think some of it's good. I don't think it deserves as much hate. You know, I obviously there's bad bands of every genre, and that's kind of my opinion. Just like there's good bands of every genre. So, yeah, I listen to everything, and I'm always open to suggestions too.
Yeah, new metal. That's interesting. I'm in my mid 40s, so I remember it well. I remember it very well. But to be honest, I still can't go there. I still have trouble with it. Some of the corn stuff I can deal with a little bit, but which bands have you been listening to in that genre?
Honestly, like some early chord is
Yeah,
definitely what I was
that's good.
digging, and a little bit of Taproot and a little bit of like Boy Hits Car and like more melodic stuff like that. Honestly, I don't know, man. I listen. Like I said, I used to, when I was younger, I was as a teenager, I was a little more of an angsty like thrasher kid, where I was like, that shit's all whack. I hate it, this and that. But as I've gotten older, I'm kind of like, hey, it's being a poser to hide something that you like. So if I like this corn song, I'm not gonna hide it from anyone, just like I like some pop punk stuff. I like AFI and bands like that a lot too. That for me when I was a kid, that was the stuff that was popular, so I don't need to hide that from anyone. What are you gonna do? Judge me? Like, I could care less.
Was it a foregone conclusion for yourself from when you were a young kid, and we sort of touched on this already, that you were going to be a musician, or did you have designs on, say, becoming an engineer or something else?
I wanted to be a marine biologist when I was a kid, to be quite honest. I wanted to live by the ocean, study things that lived in the ocean, and do stuff like that.
Mhm.
As I got older, obviously that just changed. I picked up a guitar for the first time and fell in love with it. But I'll say at a young age, I knew I wanted to be a musician. By the time I was 12 or so, I definitely wanted to rock out on stage and do that. Make it doing that if I could.
Well, you're definitely doing it, mate. I better leave it there because no doubt you've got another interview coming through in 2 minutes' time. But look, I think you're doing a bloody good job here with Go Ahead and Die. And I'm glad it sounds like people are focusing on the right things here for you, because I do hope you have another album come out with this here, because I said this to so many people who create what I broadly call extreme metal, which I lump you guys in with as well. And that's a good thing. But it is important to a lot of people that people like you keep on creating music, because it's important to our lives, mate.
Oh,
And
no, thank you. That's the best compliment I could receive, man. Seriously.
no, that's good, mate. Yeah, well, it is important, I think, that you know that you creators out there who have the ability to put together an album, and then a good album, mind you, with decent riffs, solid drumming, great vocals, great lyrical content, that sort of thing, man. During the pandemic, people are locked up. This is like manna from heaven for a lot of people, mate. So I just hope you keep on doing what it is that you're doing, mate. So good luck, God bless, and I'm sure, hopefully, fingers crossed, we see you down here fairly soon as well.
No, definitely. And likewise, man, I would love to come down there and play. I'd love to bring this around the world, and I will definitely keep making music. And no, thank you. That was some really kind words right there. I actually really appreciate it. The fact that anyone wants to talk to me without just instantly reverting to this kid's some shithead because his dad's a rock
Yeah.
star, like it's really nice to actually have a human to human conversation. So thanks so much for having me. And likewise, I hope we can make it down there. Definitely.
For sure, mate. We'll try and have a beer, mate, when you come down.
Absolutely. I would love to. Thank you. Have a good day, man. All right.
No worries, brother. All the best.
Yeah.
Sir.
Take
Cheers.
care.
Catch up.
You have been listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast series. My name is Andrew Mackay Smith. That interview subject was Igor Amadeus Cavalera from the outfit Go Ahead and Die. Thanks for tuning in.